The year 2015 was the worst year of my life. I had been in a very abusive relationship at the time with a man named Nathaniel Reed. I nearly lost my life during my toxic relationship with Nate, and it took everything I had just to escape the abuse I endured. Things were still hard for me, even after I had left him, as Nate followed me around, threatening to kill me. I can never forget what he said to me on the day I told him I was leaving him. As he looked me in the eyes, he said, "The day you leave me, Polly, is the day I take your life away from you." The situation got so bad that I had to take out a restraining order against him. My life remained in shambles after my horrific relationship, but amidst all my pain, I found yoga and it saved my life. I had never really been interested in yoga as I wasn't a fan and didn't believe it worked. However, one fateful afternoon, my friend Clarice, who was an avid yoga enthusiast, asked me if I wanted to go. I declined at first, saying I wasn't in the mood, but Clarice convinced me, saying, "Look, Polly, I'm tired of seeing you fall deeper into depression as you continue feeling sorry for yourself. Just give yoga a chance and you'll feel better in no time. Trust me." I still wasn't convinced, and we argued about the matter for a few minutes before Clarice finally convinced me. I can still remember walking into the yoga class after we had arrived at the yoga studio that afternoon. The yoga instructor walked in and told us we were going to be doing something called Hatha Yoga. The session lasted about an hour, and going to that yoga class changed my life. I'd often heard that doing yoga was a life-changing experience, but I never believed it until my first yoga class. I began noticing the effects pretty quickly, and it was amazing. My stress and anxiety levels reduced drastically with every class I participated in. I started eating healthy again, going out more, and getting more sleep. I'd also made a lot of new friends in the yoga community, and for the first time in a long while, I was truly happy, and it was all because of yoga. Unfortunately for me, this happiness didn't last long, as on the 13th of February 2016, I experienced unspeakable horrors during my beloved yoga classes. I can still remember how I felt that fateful morning. I was really excited as my yoga instructor, a man named Krish Patil, asked me if I wanted to go out to dinner on Valentine's Day. I'd been spending time with Krish ever since I began my yoga classes. We'd gotten closer over the months, and I knew he had a crush on me. It was difficult for me to open up to him at first as I was still traumatized by my last relationship, but Krish was a patient and sweet guy. Attending his yoga classes also helped me to move on from the past. So when he asked me out, I decided to give him a chance because I wanted to re-enter the dating world, and I agreed to go out with him. We'd planned to go out on Valentine's Day, and I was looking forward to seeing him at my yoga classes that afternoon so we could finalize our plans. But when I got to the yoga studio, Krish was nowhere to be found. I looked around for him but was informed he hadn't arrived yet and that a replacement yoga instructor had filled in for Krish's classes that day. As I walked into the class, I studied the new instructor, and he seemed oddly familiar. The man who said his name was George had black hair and blue eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd met him before, but no matter how much I tried, my brain wasn't able to figure out who he was or where I'd met him. Before the classes started, George told everyone that we were going to do an advanced type of Hatha Yoga. I'd done Hatha Yoga a couple of times before, but there was something very different about this one. For those who don't know, Hatha Yoga is a 90-minute class, usually carried out in a room that had been heated to 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. However, the room felt much hotter than that during George's Hatha Yoga class. I could tell the room was way hotter than it was supposed to be, as I'd experienced Hatha Yoga before, but George didn't seem to mind as he kept the heat absurdly high. I tried to stay hydrated throughout the class, but the heat eventually became too much for me to bear. I was already finding it difficult to breathe as George kept ramping up the heat, and I could tell the excessive heat was affecting the other members of the class, so I walked up to him and said, "I don't mean to be rude, George, but don't you think the room's far too hot? It's meant to be Hatha Yoga, not scorching yoga, and if you keep ramping up the heat, we're all going to pass out." George remained silent for a few seconds before he looked me in the eyes and said, "Well, I wouldn't want you to pass out before I get the chance to kill you, my sweet Polly." My heart dropped into my stomach as George finished his statement, and a horrific realization dawned on me. My brain had finally figured out why the replacement yoga instructor looked so familiar, as it was now clear to me that George, the yoga instructor, was actually my abusive boyfriend, Nate. He had disguised himself pretty well, as he had cut and dyed his hair black, shaved his beard, and wore blue contact lenses to hide the real color of his brown eyes. I could also tell he had been distorting his voice so I wouldn't recognize him quickly, but his perfect disguise fell apart once he uttered the words, "My sweet Polly," as he was the only one who called me that. My body was crippled with fear at this point, but I managed to scream and run away from him. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that far before he pinned me down and punched me across the face. The other women in the yoga class, who quickly noticed our yoga instructor had attacked me, rushed to my aid as they tried to pry Nate off me. However, right before they could take him off, Nate brought out a gun he'd been concealing and brutally shot the closest 3 women who were trying to subdue him in cold blood. All 3 of them were killed instantly, and within seconds, pure chaos ensued as everyone rushed, screaming towards the exits. Nate then placed the gun down as he wrapped his arms around my throat. He then looked me in the eyes and said, "Didn't I tell you that I'd kill you if you ever left me, Polly? You really thought hiding in this yoga studio, doing some stupid yoga, would help you get over our relationship and forget about me? Well, I'm going to strangle you to death in the yoga studio that you love so much to make you pay for leaving me." Nate tightened his arms around my neck as I gasped for air. I kicked and thrashed around as I tried everything I could to push him off me, but he didn't budge. I was losing consciousness now, but I wasn't willing to give up as I kept fighting. But nothing worked as Nate didn't let up. The world around me was going dark now, and all I could see was Nate's bulging red eyes as he choked me to death. I began to lose the feeling in my legs now, and my eyes grew heavy. But right before the world went dark, 2 large men burst into the room and attacked Nate. Nate tried to reach for his gun, but he wasn't able to get to it in time as he had already been subdued. I noticed the men who had taken him off me weren't police officers. They were the security guards who worked at the gate of the yoga studio. They told me they had heard the screaming and gunshots and that the police were on their way. I was still gasping for air, but I managed to thank them for saving my life. It wasn't long after that before I could hear the sirens, and Nate was arrested. When questioned by the detectives, Nate confessed to the police that he had been stalking me and monitoring my every move, even after I placed a restraining order against him. When asked why he decided to wait all this time to kill me, Nate told the police that he found out about my date with my yoga instructor, Krish, the next day, and it infuriated him. So he followed Krish home and shot him in his bed that night. He then gathered some fake credentials and called the yoga studio to impersonate the replacement yoga instructor so he could get to me. Nate also told the police that he had planned to kill me after the yoga class was over and I was alone, but he didn't expect me to recognize him before he could carry out his plan. The news of Nate's confession horrified our entire town, and I cried and blamed myself for Krish's death. It took a few weeks before Nate was sentenced in court. The trial was very short, and Nate was locked away for life. It's been a few years since this happened, but despite getting justice in the end, I still feel like Nate won. I am forever traumatized by that day. Every time I go to a yoga class, I remember all the horrific things I went through. I've tried to use therapy to get over it, but absolutely nothing works. This trauma continues to hurt me every day as my beloved yoga, which once brought me peace, now brings me nothing but fear and terror.
Hey guys, my name is Ralph. I'm one of those people who spends all day at the gym. What can I tell you? I love training. I've been doing it since I was a teenager and I never stopped. Over time, I became a personal trainer and have won several martial arts competitions. I am committed to what I do. Anyway, I have a very low profile, and it doesn't bother me at all. If you see me in the gym, I'm just one of the crowd, training and minding my own business. Despite this, I'm very friendly, but I think discipline is the most important thing. So while I'm on training time, you'll never see me getting distracted, laughing with other people, or even wearing clothes that show off my muscles or draw too much attention to myself. I'm just happy doing my thing. Of course, not everyone is like me, and this is where I introduce you to Gary. Gary is a man. quirky. He's been coming to the gym for less time than I have, but for some reason he always thought he was the king of the place. I tried to give him a chance and not judge him too much without knowing him, but every time I heard him talk to other people and made himself heard, I got the same impression. He was a person who just worked out to get attention, a person who thought he was more than everyone else. Someone who made new people feel bad and walked around the gym like he owned it, harassing people to get off the machines he wanted to use. Of course, he never messed with me. Even though I was more discreet, he could see that I wasn't a new person or that I looked at him with fear or discomfort. Still, I was aware that he often talked about me with his girlfriend as they looked at me and laughed together. I didn't mind. As long as he didn't mess with me, he could laugh all he wanted. But there was just one problem. One day, he did pick on me. That day was a normal afternoon at the gym. Gary was being relatively annoying, harassing a teenager just starting. It all started with Gary wanting him to get off a machine he wanted to use, but seeing that the kid was easy to harass, he started following him around, laughing at how little weight he was lifting and rushing him off machines he didn't even want to use. After a few minutes of harassment, the gym owner saw the situation and became very upset with Gary. He threatened to take away his gym membership if he continued to harass new people and even said he would beat him up, too. Gary might be a bully, but he understood his position in the food chain because his only response to the gym owner was to apologize and tell him he would leave the new guy alone. But this didn't sit well with Gary. After that, he kept hanging around the gym, furious and looking for a fight with the first person he came across. And that person was me. At that moment, the whole gym was afraid to unleash the fury that Gary was accumulating. Everyone dodged him and got out of the machines when he arrived. Unlike the rest, I was just doing my routine, and as I headed for the weights, Gary and his girlfriend were in the way, and the giant man shoved me with his shoulder when I tried to pass. Surprised that he had done something so immature, I turned to look at him, to which he began to insult me up and down. I acted more calmly and told him that it was his fault for putting his shoulder hard. It didn't take a second for the response to come. Gary became enraged at the simple fact that I had responded to him and tried to take a swing at me. I evaded him and quickly punched him back in the face, knocking him off balance and out of the fight with no problem. Before I could figure out what was going on, I had a bunch of people surrounding me, separating us both from fighting. I immediately calmed down and thought about going back to my business, but Gary hadn't given up. He kept insulting me and desperately yelling at me to come over if I had the guts. Naturally, I was not interested in continuing this fight. I could have knocked him out right then and there, but I'm not like that, and I'm not interested in being like that. I decided to go back to my business and let this clown insult me alone, but he took the next step. The man dodged the people who were grabbing him and ran around the side of the gym to catch up to me and try again to hit me before someone else separated us one more time. When he tried to hit me, I dodged him again and gave him a hard punch in the face, which knocked him out immediately and made him fall to the ground. His girlfriend helped him up and he left the gym humiliated. The owner of the gym came up to me and told me that he saw the tapes of what happened, making it clear that I did what I had to do and that he didn't blame me for what had happened. He also told me that Gary would never set foot in that place again as a partner. After that, the days at the gym went much smoother. Without realizing it or wanting it, I became somewhat of a star at the gym. Everyone greeted me and was happy with me for getting Gary out of there. I didn't care about any of that. I mean, I smiled and thanked them every time they said something to me, but I wasn't proud of starring in a simple street fight at the gym. What I didn't know was that this fight was far from over. I should have realized that Gary would be furious about what happened. The man doesn't like and isn't used to losing a fight. And one day on the street, he came at me. I was walking to the gym that day. I live a few blocks away, so I always walk. I was going like any other day, but all of a sudden, I felt a very strong blow on my ankle that made me fall to the ground. Not understanding what was happening, I turned around and saw my attacker. It was Gary, but he was not alone. There were two men of similar physical build next to him, probably friends. They all had a metal pipe in their hands and looked like they were anxious to hurt me more. Without waiting a second longer than necessary, the three men kicked me violently on the floor. The kicks were very painful, but also somewhat clumsy. They seemed to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs. I tried to get away as best I could, but Gary grabbed me by the hair and dragged me down the sidewalk into the street. He was really out of it, with a rage I had never seen in him before. People passing by called the police or just watched, but no one came forward to do anything. Could I blame them? Not many would go up to these 3 savage men and fight with them to defend a stranger. In all the punching and kicking, I knew that somehow I had to do something or I was going to die. These people were not holding back, and accidentally or not, they were possibly going to kill me. In all the kicking, I grabbed Gary's leg and pulled it back, causing him to fall to the ground. Once on the floor, I used my 2 fingers to squeeze his eyes. I knew I had to squeeze them, but not too hard, otherwise I could kill him. While one of Gary's friends kept hitting me in the back, another one grabbed me with his huge arms and pulled me away from Gary. Once away, they both stayed with their friend while I managed to stand on 1 foot and left, jumping in pain. Gary recovered quickly and came charging back to continue attacking me. I ran into a nearby barbershop asking for help, and everyone was shocked at how beat up I was. Gary and his friend soon entered the salon, and a huge bully rammed me to the floor, ready to hit me again. Gary was surprised that this time his friends were not helping him. When he looked up, he too stopped. The owner of the barbershop was pointing a shotgun at him. A few minutes later, the police arrived and took the 3 men away. The owner of the barbershop told me how he had a gun in case they came in to rob him, as it had been happening quite often in the neighborhood. Due to my injury, I was unable to train for several months, but after a while, I was fine. After he and his friends were arrested, I never heard from Gary again. Neither he nor his girlfriend ever came back to the gym. I didn't even see them in the neighborhood. The only thing I hope is that if this psycho is in another gym, he has learned a lesson from what he went through and finally behaves with a little more humility.
Hello, guys. I prefer not to tell you my real name. Let's say my name is Barbara. I'm sorry. I'm a little paranoid. But after this story, you will understand why. I'm not going to tell you that before this happened, I was a deluded and innocent person. I know what bullying is like, and I have experienced it many times, even as a child. But I have never experienced anything like what happened to me that day. I could have been unharmed, but I feel that day I had a significantly sadder life, as if I had lost something that I could never get back. I would like to tell you that this was a one-day thing, but in reality, it was something that went on for several weeks. The first day it all happened was the day I least expected it. It was at the gym with my boyfriend, working out as I had been most of the week. He was near me, lifting weights, while I was working with a kettlebell. To work with this kettlebell, I had to squat down and stand up. I did my exercises as normal until my boyfriend, who was standing near me, asked me if I was okay. When he spoke to me, he seemed as nice as ever, but I knew him and immediately realized that something was wrong. He was just doing an exercise. Why would he come to me and ask me if everything was okay? I tried to ask him what was wrong, but he wouldn't tell me. Instead, he just said he wanted to say hello and went back to doing his exercises. I went on with my exercises too. For some reason though, I was uncomfortable. Haven't you ever had the feeling of being watched? I know that in a gym, someone will always be watching you, but this feeling was different. While I was doing my exercises, I felt just wrong, like something was out of place. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but soon after, I realized that something was wrong. The reason my boyfriend had approached me was that there was a man behind me. That man didn't look scary. He was about my age and not very muscular, but I could tell he had been going to the gym for a while. I'd seen him around here a few times before, and he almost always did exercises near me or stared at me. I thought it was a typical attitude of a man who wanted to talk back to me, and that he would calm down when he saw my boyfriend. I was very wrong. While I was doing my exercises, the man took advantage of my bending over to take pictures of me from behind. He didn't take 1 or 2 pictures of me. The man obsessively stood behind me and took pictures and videos of me for several minutes. He was obsessed with me. I continued to exercise without knowing this was happening until the stalker decided to increase the intensity. I was doing squats with a barbell, and the man got behind me. As I was doing the squat, he was trying to explain to me how to do it right.
You have to improve your technique. You have a bad posture. You have to keep your back straight.
While he was giving me advice on how to do the exercise well, the man was touching my waist and hips. He was making me very uncomfortable. But I thought he wasn't doing it on purpose. I thought he was genuinely trying to help me. I didn't know how to get out of this situation without being rude. Seeing me uncomfortable, my boyfriend angrily approached me and pushed him away. He seemed quite angry, and the two of them started arguing. My boyfriend told him to leave me alone, while the man replied that he was just trying to help me. The fight started to escalate, and I wanted to stop my boyfriend. Maybe he was overreacting, and it was all a misunderstanding. In the middle of the argument, the girl who was training next to me joined the fight and said something to my boyfriend that made me angry, and my blood ran cold at the same time. The girl said that she thought the man was taking pictures of me while I was training. When she said this, my boyfriend was furious and took out his cell phone. It was true. The stalker grabbed his phone again, and my boyfriend got even angrier. He looked like he was going to hit him at any moment, and it was perfect. If he didn't, I would. The stalker chickened out and just walked out of the gym. My boyfriend thanked the girl who helped us, and he came to work out with me. After that, I felt just plain bad. I don't know if you can understand me in this, but the fact that someone took pictures of me while I was training, the fact that he came up to me and touched me while pretending to want to help me, it made me feel fragile, weak, and manipulated. I wanted to cry on the spot, but my boyfriend comforted me, and we started training together. That could have been it, and it would have been just an incident, but something else happened. After a few more minutes of training, I told my boyfriend that I wanted to leave early. He and I split up in the locker room. I went to the women's locker room to take a shower, and he to the men's locker room. The locker rooms are usually full at a certain time, and since it was 5:25 p.m. at that time, an intermediate time, it was almost empty. This did not bother me, as I needed to be alone. I showered as usual and put on the same comfortable clothes I always wear after training. But when I was about to leave, someone came in. It was the man who had harassed me before. "What are you doing here? This is the women's locker room."
Hey, I think there was a misunderstanding between us. You should explain that it was all a mistake.
"Get out of here now, or I'll yell."
No, you don't want to scream.
"Oh no? What's stopping me?" At that moment, I noticed that the man had something in his hand. The iron bar that is used to lift weights. The stalker smiled and used that iron to lock the exit door. That's when I understood my situation.
Because if you scream, they'll get me for sure. But until I can get in, you'll be dead.
What do you want?
Quiet. I don't want to do anything with you. I won't do what you think. I just want to talk. There was a misunderstanding.
What misunderstanding could there have been? You were taking pictures of me while I was training.
They were just innocent pictures. I wanted to send them to my friends. I admit it was wrong. But I've been coming to this gym for a long time, and now I won't be able to come here anymore. I just wanted to have a few minutes with you to settle things and make sure everything is okay.
By locking me up, do you think you'll fix things?
Hey, you don't have to be so defensive. Your boyfriend isn't here for you to pretend you're not interested in me. I know you always look at me.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't look at you.
Oh, yes you do. You always look at me. You provoke me. But you didn't expect me to dare to tell you something, did you? I knew you'd be offended if I told you. That's your game. But the game is over.
The stalker was getting closer and closer. I didn't know what I could do next, or how I would react, but I knew I wasn't going to stand by and let this psycho do whatever he had in mind. I need him. The knee had to be in his balls, and I ran out the door. The man knelt in pain, but began to regain his composure quickly. I tried to pull the rod out of the door, but it was stuck. I could feel it move a little at a time, but between my tiredness and my nerves, I couldn't do it in time, and the man was already standing, staring at me.
Big mistake. Do you want to take this bar out? Don't worry, I'll help you.
Help! Somebody help!
Yell all you want. Do you know why I took out this stick? To beat you to death with it. I don't care if I get caught later. You know why? Because I'm filthy rich. Even if I get sentenced, do you know how fast I can walk out the back door without anyone noticing? You, on the other hand, are dead. Do you know why? Answer me! Do you know why?
Why?
Because I couldn't live after the way you and your boyfriend humiliated me in front of the whole gym. What kind of man would that be, huh? Huh?
As soon as he finished speaking, the man threw himself at me with a metal rod. At that moment, I understood that he wasn't playing. The blow was aimed at my head. Blinded by anger, the stalker swung his stick, trying to hit me. After dodging the second blow, I fell to the ground. I tried to dodge the third blow from the ground, but it hit me directly in my shoulder. Ah! I tried to crawl towards the exit door while he slowly walked towards me, ready to give me the coup de grace. But it didn't happen. The door opened violently and someone rammed into the man, knocking him to the ground immediately. It wasn't my boyfriend. It was the owner of the gym, accompanied by two other men. They were passing through the locker room when they heard me scream. They grabbed the man and had him down in seconds. Soon after, the police were called, and I was taken to the hospital. My boyfriend was with me the whole time, disappointed and furious with himself for not having imagined that something like this could happen. The psychopath was arrested for attempted murder, and as if there weren't enough witnesses, the gym owner showed the tape of the first harassment to the police. None of us knew about it, but just in case, they had security cameras hidden throughout the gym. Although they didn't film the locker room, the evidence was more than enough. The man was arrested, just as he said he would be. But he didn't count on one thing. It was not he who had the money, but his family. Faced with so much evidence, the family was disgusted with his behavior, so they did not give him any support. Today, the stalker is still in prison, and I know he will be for many, many years to come.